I find that when we hit midlife, we sit in one of two camps. Camp number one is we have this dream that we're asking ourselves, is it too late? Should I have done it already? And now we're trying to beat ourselves up. It's too late. Why didn't I do it? I've always been thinking about it. Or camp number two, where you've kind of just forgotten the dream. And if I asked you to really pause right now and think about it, and you thought back to when you were in your 20s or your 30s, maybe there was something and you just shoved it aside because there was no time, or maybe you just didn't believe you could do it. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not too late because maybe you can do it. And I'm going to do that with my amazing guest today, and I am so excited for her to join us. Aven Ellis is a USA Today best-selling romance author. She began her publishing career in 2013 with her debut book, Connectivity. Her books are meant to make you laugh out loud and fall in love. Happily ever after endings and good boy heroes are guaranteed. You're going to hear me say I have read them all. Aven lives in Dallas with her family, is a sports fan, a Formula One fan, and can be found pretty much anytime in her favorite chair, writing as many words as possible. And just in case you didn't catch that, starting in 2013 meant she started well into her career and her life. So we're going to talk about that. Welcome to Mind Your Midlife, your go-to resource for confidence and success, one thought at a time. Unlike most advice out there, we believe that simply telling you to believe in yourself or change your habits isn't enough to wake up excited about life or feel truly confident in your body. Each week, you'll gain actionable strategies and, oh my goodness, powerful insights to stop feeling stuck and start loving your midlife. This is the Mind Your Midlife podcast. Okay, so welcome, Aven.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited to talk with you. Actually, really excited to talk with you. I love the idea that I've read your books and here you are on the podcast. Super exciting. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Did you always want to be an author?
Yeah, pretty much. When I was a little girl, I loved telling stories. I liked writing stories. I've always been writing stories. But back when I was growing up, it was before self-publishing became an industry. So pretty much saying you were going to be a novelist wasn't considered a solid career path at all, being that we're like 5 major publishers and your odds of being published were slim. So I went the journalism track instead, but I was always writing fiction on the side. Even when I was doing other things, that love still remained constant throughout my whole life.
And when you were writing fiction on the side, was that kind of just for yourself, or were you putting it out there somewhere?
It started for myself, and then I met through a coworker of mine at the time. I was working at Fox Sports. Coworker had a wife who was like, hey, she's trying to write books too. And through her, and we met another one, we formed a critique group where we started pitching publishing houses and trying to get agents and going that route. And we met once a week for years and years and years. And eventually one woman became published. And then I found a small publishing house, and I worked this entire time. I was published through a small house, and then eventually I transitioned to publishing for myself, which has been the best career move ever.
I love hearing that. And I wasn't planning to ask you about that at all, but we might need to circle back because I'm sure listeners are curious. What does it even mean to publish for yourself and to self-publish? So I'm going to remind myself to circle back to that. And maybe it'll come up as we talk, actually, because today's theme is, I'm calling it, Yes, You Do Have Time. And so tell us a little bit about how that applies to your story of actually getting started and putting books out there.
Sure. Because I was working full time, and I also, at the time I got published with a publisher, I had a 5-year-old in kindergarten. So it's not like I was able to write thousands of words a day. You'll hear stories about, and I still can't do it. I'm a full-time author now. I still
Mhm.
don't write like 8,000 words a day ever. I've never done that. Some authors do that every day. That's not me. So what I would do is I would write on my lunch break, for example.
Mhm.
I would bring a little thumb drive with me and I would clock out for lunch, or sometimes I would bring my own laptop and I would go find a nice quiet place and to go write for an hour during lunch. And then when I would pick my daughter up from school, I would bring my laptop into and put it in the front seat of the car, move the seat all the way back and make it like a workspace. And I would
Wow.
write in the 30 minutes I was in the carpool lane. And sometimes you could knock out, 500 words in the carpool lane. And then I would write like Saturday morning before everyone got up or, when she was taking a nap. So I never ever sat down and just wrote for a full day straight. I
Mhm.
still don't do that to this day. So I think when I hear people say, it's really hard, I have kids and I even took my laptop to my daughter's tennis lessons when she got older and I would sit courtside and write courtside. Now, I did get sometimes my laptop did get hit with a tennis ball, so that was kind of a side exciting uh, adventure in writing at the tennis court. But I would just find little places where even if you can just write a few hundred words, those few hundred words add up. And that's what I mean about you can find the time. It may be hard for you at first because if you're writing, you think you may need music or you might need quiet or you might need, you might want to be in a coffee shop. I just learned if I want to do this, sometimes you're going to have to teach yourself to write in a less than ideal condition. And now I can
Mhm.
write anywhere, anytime. I really can.
Love it.
It does not matter because I've trained myself to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And this is kind of how I've grown my coaching business is alongside other things, doing it when I can do it. And
Mhm.
what do you think it is that maybe kept you going as opposed to just saying, oh, this is too much. I just need a lunch break. I don't want to, what kept you going?
I loved it so much and I still do. I never considered it work.
Mm.
I still don't. And now I schedule my writing. Like I get up in the morning, take my daughter now is in high school, take my daughter to high school. And I come back and I do like, I'll check my ads, I'll do some social media, catch up on emails, and then I'll start writing. And then I know I need to break for lunch. And then because I'm an active chemotherapy patient, I need a nap every day. I have to have a nap every day. So every day after lunch, I take a nap. And it's like several hours. I lay down for several hours. And I just know that's going to be part of my routine. And I think that's a lot of it. But it's also learning that, maybe I only wrote 500 words before I took my nap, and that's okay. Maybe it's 200 words. Maybe it's 2,000. I don't put pressure on myself to hit a certain number. I think that stymies a lot of people that they think
Mhm.
unless I'm writing at least 3,000 or 4,000 words a day, it's never going to happen. No, these words accumulate and they mean something. And maybe sometimes you write 200 words of garbage, but you're working through your process.
Yeah.
And I think you have to give yourself permission to just do what you can. And you'll be surprised at what you can do when you just go, okay. The one rule I do have is I do try to write 5 days a week, at least 500 words a day. And
Okay.
that's kind of my minimum. But you could change that if you have like 4 kids in sports and you have a job and you have your own stuff to do. Maybe you make it 200 words a day. Maybe you make it 3 days a week. But as long as I think you commit to something, those words will start accumulating. And then you'll get really excited because you'll start seeing a story growing and you'll be like, "Ooh, this is really exciting. I'm actually doing this." And I think that's very, very helpful, been helpful for me.
Oh my gosh. I mean, listeners, pause, rewind, listen to that again. It- there's so many things in there because I think so often we beat ourselves up on a day that maybe it doesn't go well, whatever it was we wanted to do,
Yeah.
and it doesn't go well, and we're like, "Psh, I got to throw the baby out with the bathwater, like everything is terrible and I need to stop." And you address that. Some days you're going to feel it and some days you're not, and it's okay, right? It still adds up.
Absolutely. And I even know one of my close friends, she's an amazing Regency author, Alexa Aston, and she's prolific when she produces. Well, she dictates a lot of her stories when she takes her morning walk. So she's
Oh,
knocking out
wow.
two things at one time. She is getting her exercise in and she's dictating into her phone her story notes. So there's little ways you can do it and you can find these little like I mean, I did get weird looks in the car parking lot in the the pickup lane because I'm sitting here typing away on a laptop, and people would walk by and kind of be like, "What is she doing?" But I got stuff done. I got a lot of stuff done, and I think it's just finding these little pockets of time. Like maybe before if you sit down and watch your favorite TV show at night, maybe before that, because nowadays we have this luxury of pause and DVR.
Mhm.
Maybe you say, "I'm going to take 15 minutes before we start the show. Everyone, give me 15 minutes." And maybe outline what you want to write the next day, or make notes to yourself, or knock out 3 lines of dialogue. I mean, it's just creating these little things add up, even if they don't feel like it, but you're going to feel so good when you look at the end of the week and go, wow, look at this, look what I've created. And it's all because you
Yeah.
managed to squeeze in little pockets of time.
Yeah, it really, really, really does add up. And there's a book actually about this very thing called The Slight Edge. I can't think of the author's name right now, but basically he says all these little tiny actions you take and decisions you make take you on a path going completely in another direction over time. And that's exactly what you're saying. Yeah, amazing. Do you think if we were to flip it around, do you think that there are things that maybe held you back from growing this author career faster, or that you look back and think, that kind of held me back in some way?
Ooh, well, I would say for me, one thing, the publisher I used to be with kind of, I was afraid to leave, even though, and go do it on my own, although that turned out to be the best thing. And I would have achieved a different success level much faster if I would have left sooner. But it was that fear of doing it all on your own, like being responsible for your covers and being responsible for all your advertising. And it seemed very, very intimidating. But once I started reading and Google and YouTubing and taking a lot of notes, and I finally made that leap, it was like, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? I mean,
Mhm.
but I wasn't ready at that time. And it was just that fear of the unknown that kind of held me back. So it's working through those fears, even though it took me longer than I wished it would have. I did get there,
Of
and
course.
it's all good now. But it definitely, that held me back, was just fear of doing it all myself, that I would know enough or I would make mistakes, and you still do. You just have to embrace them and learn from them and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, fearing mistakes is a big thing, but you're right. We're always going to make mistakes. Even if we set out the perfect path and we know everything, we're still going to make a mistake. So just go, just do. What was the turning point that caused you to say, okay, now it's time. I'm going to go do this independently?
I wasn't happy with the edits I was receiving, and I didn't like the cover. I know, I had some input on it, but it wasn't exactly my perfect vision. And I was told I needed to put more drama in my books, and my books aren't all about that. And I started thinking, I don't think these are the books they wanted me to produce were not the books I felt my readers wanted to read, and at least from me. And I decided, if I really want to be authentic and tell the stories I want to tell, I'm going to have to do it myself. And that was kind of the final pushing point.
Yeah,
I just wasn't happy. And I was happy with writing, but I wasn't happy with the publishing process. And
right.
now I'm like, it's awesome because, I get to pick my cover art, I get to pick my artist, I get to pick what I write and how the story is told. And it's been the best thing I've ever done. So that was the big motivator for me, was being totally in control of the stories I wanted to tell.
Yeah, I see that 100%. And you have some exciting things coming up now, right? I follow you. I know there's going to be multiple books coming out soon. I've seen you talk about it.
Yeah, I've got some books. I have in my billionaires series, I'm working on book number, I think it's 5. I lose track sometimes. Book number 5, and I'm starting an F Formula One romance, which I'm really really excited about, because I think that's going to be, with Drive to Survive being such an interest on Netflix. I think it's going to be a fun story to tell. And then I signed another audiobook deal with Tantor Audio. All 3 of my Formula One books are going to be produced by them into audio, so that's
Love
exciting.
it. Love
too.
it, love it, love it. And you know what? I introduced you at the beginning of the episode, but I think I would like this to be in your words. So tell us what your books are so that somebody listening, they don't know you yet, they will. Give us like the general gist.
I would say my books are they're funny, they're heartwarming, they're light reading. I'm not into like a if you're looking for a big dramatic story, this I'm not the author for you. But if you're looking for someone to make you laugh and make you fall in love and you like those swoony love moments and you like found family, that's a big theme in all my books. Girl friendships, those are the type of stories I tell. They're about young women finding themselves in both their career and in relationships, both with their men and their friendships. And those are the stories I like to tell.
I love the way you said that, and I knew that I would. And listeners, I have read them all, every single one, just so you know. They're all good. And I let's take just a little hop over to this particular topic and then come back to the self-publishing. But I really love to read kind of romantic comedies and romance books, and I get so fascinated about this topic when people discuss it because it feels like there's two different camps. Either people are like, no, I would never read that, or people are really into it. And for me, I love the fact that I kind of know how it's going to end, and
Mhm.
that makes me feel comfortable and happy. But let's see how we got there, you know? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, every kind of industry standard, if it's going to be labeled a romance, it has to have a happily ever after. If it's women's fiction, it doesn't have to have a happily ever after, but that's kind of the automatic thing with any romance novel. It's going to have that. So you're right. It's really about the journey. And one big trend, and I've done this with the last couple of books, but a big trend right now that people seem to, readers seem to like, is the no third act breakup. That just
Mm.
means there's no big, which used to be very formula in all my other books. It's pretty much there. There's this big, you know, it's coming. You dread that it's coming. They break up, but then they get back together, and that's the end of the book. Well, that's not as and some people really don't like that anymore, and what they prefer is the no third act breakup, which means the couple faces some other obstacle. Some other obstacle is resolved, but it doesn't have anything to do with the couple breaking up. And in the last few books, in Miami Hoops, it was about her career, that they worked together to solve a big career problem. I won't say what it is in Miami Ice because it would totally like give away the big thing in the book, but it's an instant that has nothing to do with them breaking up at all. So that's kind of been an interesting trend to follow and to see it gain popularity where people actually tag it no third act breakup. You can search for books on TikTok, no third act breakup.
Hmm.
And it's actually becoming a thing now, which is kind of interesting to see. So I'm currently writing some that way if the story leads itself to that kind of situation. But a lot of readers do like those, which is kind of an interesting trend.
Yeah, that is interesting. And the two Miami books I have read, and I saw the difference. And I
Mhm.
just thought maybe it was those books, no biggie, but that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you'll be surprised if you go like search Reddit or TikTok, Google any of them, just put in no third act breakup, and you'll get a whole bunch of stuff about it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I can't remember who said it, and I guess I kind of said this before, but somebody on probably Instagram somewhere said, I don't want to hear anybody telling me that romance books are not fascinating or not great to read or not great to write because imagine you can create a story that people actually want to read and they know how it's going to end.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it really is because you pretty much know what you're getting into, unless you're getting into a no third act. It might be, what's going to happen at the end of this book?
Right.
Because you know it's not going to be a breakup, but you know it's going to end happily. And I think it's just kind of it's a comfort thing, don't you think? It's like we
Yeah.
we get this comfort when we pick it up. We're going to be surprised in different ways, but
Yeah.
not necessarily by the formula. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it reminds me, I was reading an article at one point about why do people like to watch the same movies or TV series over and over again? Because I know, people are watching Suits all the time over and over again, or Ted Lasso or whatever. And the article was saying it's very calming for your brain to know what's going to happen. It's like you can relax and you can be more
Oh,
entertained.
I
And
did
so I
not know
thought that
that.
was interesting.
That's really interesting. And I'm very repetitive in that way. Like I'm a huge audiobook person.
Mhm.
And I will re-listen to the same audio books, like my favorites. Like it's probably embarrassing how many times I've listened. I know the lines by heart, but there's just comfort to it. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really, and I would apply the same thing here where we kind of know what's going to happen. It's comforting, but we still get to kind of follow along. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan. So let's come back then, because I said let's make sure to talk about self publishing. And I
All
was
right.
going to ask you, let's say someone is listening and they're thinking, well, I've kind of always wanted to write too. And now I'm thinking maybe I've held myself back a bit too much and maybe I should try it. Well, what would your advice be?
My advice would be is if there's so much good free information out there right now. It's like there's never been a better time to learn if you want to learn and write your own book. There's some amazing groups on Facebook that are for the author community, whether you've written a gazillion books or you're starting your first one. Like there's the Writing Gals, which is really great. There's a lot of podcasts that have good writing information for writers, like Sell More Book Show. There's another group on Facebook called 20 Books to 50K, which is based on the premise, and this was years ago, but the premise was you could write 20 books and make enough to make 50K to like retire on or live monopoly money or whatever. That's kind of the premise. But there's like files up at the top of that group, like everything you would ever want to know about starting out, how to write a book, how to format a book, where to put your book, all your different publishing options. I mean, there's so many good resources and materials out there right now. It's just, you can learn anything you need to know. And then, of course, there's always writing conferences. Almost every regional area will have a writing conference where you can go to if that's kind of your preferred thing. There's online writing conferences. So there's a wealth of information right now for anyone who wants to start. It's just a matter of sitting down and going, okay, here's what I'm going to search for today, and let's see what I find.
Love it. So when you say self-publishing, you're making your decisions, and I see 100% that that would be a big plus for someone. But tell us what that means. It's like a term we hear a lot, but what does it mean?
It means that from start to finish, I am responsible for publishing my own books. And that means I write the manuscript, I hire an editor to edit it, I hire proofreaders to proofread it, I format it myself, which means you lay it out for ebook publication or print publication in like a
Right.
software format. And then I have an account on Amazon because I'm Amazon exclusive because I do Kindle Unlimited.
Mhm.
So I upload the books to Amazon. You set a sale date. I'm responsible for ads and promotions. So this sounds super overwhelming when you're starting, but once you get used to it, it's part of the job. It becomes like a function of a job, like any other job where you have tasks and functions and things like that. And then you're responsible for your marketing, but really, even if you're published with the house, like a traditional publisher, the marketing still falls to you unless you're like really, really big. Most of the time, the marketing still falls on you. So that's something to keep in mind. And, I just like the control I have over it. And I get more of the royalties because, with Amazon,
Right.
they're going to take their share. But if you're with a house, they take their share. Your agent might take their share. And, like I would love to have an agent right now. I'm looking for one for translations because I would like to do more foreign translations books. So sometimes there's a point where you might be hybrid like that. Like if I had an agent who was handling translation deals and things like that with publishers, I would love that. But for my American English books, I'm all in control of those, and those are right now mine.
Really interesting. Really interesting. And I guess this is one of the ways that the internet and social media has just really made everything better. We're always talking about how it's a problem, right? But this
I,
wouldn't have happened.
no, I wouldn't have a career at all. And I love what I do. I get up every day and I get to do something I love. And I've met so many interesting, fascinating people because of social media and people contacting me because they've read a book one of my books that meant something to them, or they bonded with a character in a certain way. And it's just wonderful. And you hear all the negative things, but there's so many good things too. And I just love the community of readers and writers. And it's just, I think it's great fun. I just feel very, very lucky.
Ugh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I can tell how happy you are when you're saying
Yeah.
that. So that's amazing. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about your books a little bit more specifically. What book should someone start with if they've never read any of yours?
Well, it kind of depends. If you're not a sports fan, I would say start with Connectivity or A Royal Shade of Blue. Those are billionaires and royals. If you like sports, but you really like quirky and funny, I would read the Miami series. That series is great fun, and I just laugh out loud whenever I write something for those characters. So those are the two places I'd recommend starting.
I yes, that makes sense to me. My very first book, listeners, was A Royal Shade of Blue because I am a sucker for royal stories in all forms.
They're so good. They're
But
so fun.
yeah, really cool. Really enjoyable for sure. And so the other thing I had meant to bring up is when you're in the romance genre, there's this open door, closed door romance term that
Yes.
you hear.
Yes.
And I feel like you kind of sit in between a little bit. Is
Yes.
that fair?
That's totally fair. And it depends on the book. Sometimes we're more closed, sometimes we're more open. Because the characters tell me what they need and I just kind of go with that. Now, it's usually what they would tell you. I'm really good at not listening to a lot of rules because really I should pick one lane or the other. I should either be closed door, super sweet, that's a different market, or more spicy, open door. And because I put myself in the middle, it makes it a little harder to market because I don't fit distinctly in one of these two boxes.
Mhm.
But I always vowed I would write what I wanted to read myself. And
Mm.
so I've just stayed true to that, even though it could be to my detriment to stay true to that. But you're exactly right. The way I see it, if you're coming across one of those scenes in one of my books and that's not your thing, it's easy enough to skip a couple pages because it's not the whole book. And I figure you can skip over it and pick up the next chapter and you're going to be fine. And, but the books, I've definitely gotten a little more open door the past few years. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's my brain challenging me in a new way or these characters just talk a different way. But you are exactly right. It does make it a little harder on me to find an audience and to market. But like I said, I'm really good at not listening to certain rules when I
Yeah.
don't want to.
You know what? I feel like that should be like the second part of the theme of this episode is do what you want and what feels right for you. And you don't have to listen to the rules or whatever. Because
Oh, well, I had an editor tell me once, and this is funny because some readers don't like this, but I have built an audience based on this. They said they were editing a book of mine and they wrote to the side, I don't understand why you're telling us what the characters are wearing, why we care about their fashion, because nobody cares about this. Nobody cares about what lipstick they have on. Nobody cares about their outfit. And a lot of my readers love that. In fact, I've in my reader group, they all go through phases like of trying different Jo Malone clothes because they've appeared in so many of my books because I love Jo Malone. I don't have a kickback from Jo from Estee Lauder to promote their cologne, but I've had people say, I've tried this because your character wore, ooh, I really want to find this pair of shoes that this character had on, or I like this lipstick, that sounds cool. Because it helps them connect with them in that a different way. They can see, if you're a visual person, you can see the person. But yeah, I had an editor and she was a really good editor of some of my author friends who are very, very successful authors. And she told me, you shouldn't do this. And I was like, I don't think so. And I just took that advice and went, no, I'm not doing that. So sometimes you just have to, if you just have to follow your gut. And that is something I've definitely done throughout my building my career.
Well, I'm a huge fan. I like this sitting in the middle ground idea and I follow your gut. My goodness. Yes. When we don't do that is when we have problems, I think, typically.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, and this is an industry where sometimes you do have to pivot and you do have to change because, like I said, third act breakup wasn't a thing a couple years ago. Nobody was talking about it. And now it's something people look for. So you have to be open to those kind of changes. But at the end of the day, I think following your gut, I mean, you are going to have some books that don't perform as well as others. And you have to look at why. And one of mine that I love this little book, but it just never did well. And it was going to be a series, and I had to kill the whole series because it just didn't do well. It was a book of mine called Green Tea Latte to Go. And it just didn't connect with readers. And I think it's because the hero was kind of an everyday guy and she was kind of an everyday girl. And in my world, the heroes typically tend to be billionaires, athletes, princes, or the girl is a princess. And that was the one book where they were both in completely normal professions, and it just didn't click like the other ones did. And so I had to make the decision. I had a whole series lined out. It was the Life, Love, and Latte series. And I thought it was so cute. And I was so excited about it. And at that point, I had to make the decision to end the series because I could see it wasn't going to be viable. So it's also about being able to, I followed my gut on that one. Now, in that case, it didn't turn out right. But my gut, I think, to end the series and move to something else was the right decision to make.
Really? What an interesting story. I've read that book. It was good, but I understand what you mean. It was two professional people that lived in a town, and there wasn't that
thing. Fantasy element to it that are in the other stories. The fantasy of the billionaire sitting next to you on the plane, or the fantasy of a hockey player or a Premier League superstar. That's what was different. That was the one thing I could pinpoint that was different. And now I have written a couple other everyday guys. There was in the Royal series, in the second book, the princess, married a gardener, or was hooked up with a gardener, and he was a common, but I think because she was the princess, it balanced that out. But I think most of the time my readers are drawn to the fantasy man. So I give them what they want. They want the fantasy man. We'll have the fantasy man. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if we're not enjoying ourselves, what are we doing with our novels, right?
Right. My books are big books, so you're investing a lot of time.
I love it. Okay. So tell us, as we're wrapping up, how can people find you, whether it's on Amazon or on social media or whatever, and find out?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. All of my books are on Amazon, except for one series that's wide. Everything is in Kindle Unlimited. I'm all over social media and I talk all the time. So you can always talk to me, but it's like I have a reader group on Facebook, and we have over 1,600 members in that. It's a very active group, and we just like to be silly. So if you're just looking for a place where you can hang out and have a good time and talk nonsense, that's what we do over there. Yeah, those are the main places you can find me. I would say Instagram, Facebook, the reader group of Facebook in particular, and then Threads is where I'm at.
Perfect. And I can put those links in the show notes too. So yeah, I am such an avid reader and always have been, but I am not a writer. I'm a talker. I'm a speaker. And so I know my skills and I know what I should and shouldn't be doing. And I think I've just always been fascinated by people who do have the talent for writing, because I just love it.
You tap into your gifts, and you have a gift for interviewing people. You have a gift of talking to people. That is a gift. And you're savvy enough to cultivate that gift. Where I know my gift is to write words. It's definitely not to do, I can't even do like a craft kit, like make a wreath or anything. It's going to look like garbage. I just can't. So I just give up and I go buy the pre-made wreath and hang it on my door, because that's who I am.
Yeah. And you know what? It just comes back to trusting our gut, I think, because
I think you're right.
We're trying to force ourselves into something that is not going well, or that's not quite the right thing for us. I think we can tell if we just listen.
Oh my goodness. I think today we have 2 OMG moments to remember. And that's the 2 things that I want you to take away from this episode. Number 1, it is not too late. You can do it. And you can do it in a creative way, as Aven was telling us. You can take little bits of time to start if you have to. And that adds up. And number 2, trust your gut and do it how you want to. You heard her say that her books don't fit in exactly one category or the other in some senses. And that's okay, because that's what she feels strongly about. And if she feels strongly, it's going to come through in what she's doing. So both of those are things you can take away from this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today on Mind Your Midlife. Make sure that you go to avenellis.com. You check out her books, you connect with her. You will love the community, I promise. And if you're ready to take the next step in healing your thought emotion cycle, go to cherylpfisher.com/story cycle and grab my free story cycle resource. If you are loving Mind Your Midlife, thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on Apple, scroll down right now in your app and leave a rating and a review. Now, last but not least, make sure you've hit the follow button, because on the next episode, my guest and I are talking about raising daughters and the power of personal development and the messages that we are demonstrating and sharing as we do that. It's a powerful one. You don't want to miss it. Oh my goodness, let's keep creating confidence and success, one thought at a time.